First, we wanted to inspire you, though. Here's one way that young people could be inspired to learn music. Tomorrow, the Game On concert will have the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra playing a selection of music from blockbuster video games. Game On's principal conductor, Andy Brick, leads this concert in many cities across the world. And he tells us how this type of classical music is striking a chord with younger audiences.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Brick. I am the principal conductor and music director of Game On. Game On is a symphonic video game music concert that will be performing with the Vancouver Symphony this June 11th. Game On is actually the culmination of 23 years of symphonic video game concerts. This is the third tour where we made the symphonic video game music and travel around with orchestras all over the world. And we sat down and we looked at about 100 different video game music titles or video game titles from the past 20 years or so, and came up with an initial list of 16 titles, which has now expanded to about 25, that are sort of not just blockbuster video game music titles or video game titles, but they also represent something really special. I actually did the very first symphonic video game music concert in the Western world all the way back in 2003 with the Czech National Symphony Orchestra, Bontas. And, back then nobody had done this. And I remember in that first rehearsal, walking into the first rehearsal, all the musicians were like, "What are you doing here? What is game music?" And kind of looking around at each other. But when we got to the concert hall, so the Bachhaus in Leipzig, Germany, it was sold out. And the audience was kind of going crazy. And the musicians were like, "Hey, rock stars, this is kind of cool." For me, the idea was that it was a great way to perpetuate the life of the orchestra by bringing in what I thought would be who I was. And this is 22 years ago. So at that time, we had 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds coming into the concert hall in t-shirt and jeans. And it was kind of a revolution because the concert hall was typically filled with people with, slightly graying hair in their ears, except lovers of Mahler and Beethoven. But now we have a whole new audience that has come. Well, those 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, fast forward 20 years, are now 40-year-olds. And they're sort of in their prime age of consumption and deciding on what kind of musical and arts events they want to attend. And this has now become part of their palette of music. So I think that's been sort of the primary impetus for me, is to help to foster this new audience for the symphony orchestra. For me, when I visit an orchestra, or back to an orchestra, I typically tend to see the younger side of an orchestra audience because of the repertoire and the program that I do. But I think in general that the orchestras that are opening the Vancouver Symphony and welcoming this new audience are seeing a younger audience. But I think there's another distinction here. And that is, we're seeing an audience whose palette of music is really diverse and really open. So they're not just coming to hear symphonic music concerts, but they're going out to pop concerts. They're listening to hip hop. They're listening to jazz. Because of the accessibility of music, their palette is huge. And I think that huge palette gives orchestras like the VSO an opportunity to capture this new audience in a way it's going to make it lasting. And perhaps that's the difference. Like 20 years ago, it was just a matter of getting the audience in the door for the first time. This new audience, this number. Now I think it's a question of not only capturing that same audience, who's now 35, 40 years old, but I think they're also becoming a part of the orchestral community. So they're becoming subscribers, or they're at least coming to the key concert events at the symphony.
That was Andy Brick, the principal conductor for Game On, and that concert is tomorrow night at the Orpheum Theatre in Vancouver. Okay, we are asking you, what is the importance of music education? And of course, we've been covering this, right? Last week, we talked to the Burnaby Teachers Association about budget cuts the district is facing, and the grade 7 band program is among the first programs to get cut. Surrey also confirming that it was cutting its grade 7 band as well. In Maple Ridge, they proposed cutting their band program, but a rally in support of their grade 7 band program ended with the school district reversing that proposal, taking the money instead from their operating budget surplus on a one-time basis. So that saves that program for this year. So we're asking you, how important are music education programs? And have you or your child benefited? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Joining me now is Kristen Reardon-McClellan, a board member for the Coalition for Music Education in Canada. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for being here.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
What goes through your mind? Here you have, the efforts to entice young people into music and music education using video game music. At the same time, we're looking at some programs getting cut due to budget constraints.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like such a disconnect between what we're seeing among the interests of young people and what they choose to spend their time doing. And then the decisions that older people are making for them. And it's so disheartening to see school districts putting music programs on their chopping blocks. And we can, speak to this from a perspective of all of the benefits of music education, which I think, generally, if you went around the community and asked people what they think the benefits of music education are, they'd probably be able to tell you that. So if we believe in all those things, then why are these programs dispensable in our public schools?
And I mentioned Burnaby and Surrey. To what extent are we seeing these kinds of cuts?
Yeah, so Burnaby and Surrey are the two largest districts that have proposed cuts this year. And really the issue here is that both of those districts have been long-standing models of music education, quality music education in their schools. And the target that we're seeing is the grade 7 band program. In Surrey, that program has been in effect for over 60 years. So suddenly now we're not able to continue funding this, which is distressing. The representatives from school districts will tell you that this is part of a much larger challenge rooted in chronic underfunding of K-12 public education across BC, so that this is a ministry problem. And there certainly is truth to that. And I think those of us in the education field can agree that music, not just music education, but K-12 education is underfunded in our province. And so this systemic issue then of underfunding is placing school districts in a position where they're having to make impossible decisions, decisions that reflect their funding realities rather than educational values. And so while that is true, and we can blame chronic underfunding, there are other issues I think we need to shed light on, though, which is ultimately we have to take the money that we have and make decisions on how to spend that money. And it is questionable as to why is it music that is it's always like the first thing to go.
Why do you think that is?
Well, one myth that I've heard, especially in the last several years in BC since the new curriculum came out, is that when financial times are tough, we're starting to see school districts, especially Surrey, especially in the last few weeks, adjusting language to support their purpose. So they want to save money. They see the grade 7 band program as a viable solution. And so there's this myth that band specifically is not part of the BC curriculum, or that band is extracurricular. And that could not be more false. Band is a valid curriculum-aligned way to deliver the arts education curriculum. So if you look at BC curriculum documents, you see arts education, fine arts, as the subject that needs to be taught. And in many schools, band is the exclusive vehicle, the medium, through which that curriculum is delivered. So band is the delivery model. And so taking that away in many schools ultimately takes away all of the music education that those students are getting in these elementary schools. So with the flexibility in the BC curriculum, so that it's designed to have lots of teacher autonomy in place and opportunities for schools and educators to make decisions on how they want to teach the content and what they want to teach. But saying band doesn't belong in the curriculum is kind of like saying that you can't use volleyball to teach team sports in PE. And so when you look at the arts education curriculum document, it really does specifically talk about the valuable effects of ensemble-based music learning. And the way that we're doing that in our public schools is band.
We have some calls and emails coming in too. Alan writes from West Vancouver. Band in high school taught me the value of practice, how to perform as an individual, how to perform as a group, and that it takes a diverse group of people working together to make beautiful music. Alan, thank you very much for your email. Lovely. Angie is calling us now from Surrey. Hi, Angie. What to you is the value of music education?
Wow. I have to say, I have been so lucky to chaperone for band tours to national and international festivals. I sat in a stadium watching single students win awards, watching school bands win awards, and watching that recognition translate to scholarships, to entrance to national and international universities. I've actually sat next to a student on a bus who received another scholarship offer from a Canadian school after hearing about their performance in Moscow, Idaho. And I want to just use the analogy, with sports. We take our kids, and if we want them to be a successful hockey player, we start them at a young age, right? And so why all of a sudden when we have this legacy of success that starts with this 60-year history of band in Surrey schools, and of course across the province, band in many schools, and that leading to success in the music industry, success in the arts industry, success in music therapy industry. Why are we all of a sudden taking away that essential early education? And, it's my understanding that there have been models presented to keep Band 7 in Surrey particular, and I'm sure in Burnaby and other school districts. And I've seen really creative solutions come through some districts where band has been cut and they've been able to sustain the program. And I'm concerned that there's not enough eye being given to all of these models of delivery. Yeah.
Yeah. You're a parent in Surrey, Angie?
I am a parent in the Surrey School District, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You go ahead.
So my son graduated 3 years ago, and he still plays in a community big band. And my daughter's graduating this year, and I just really feel like the torch needs to be passed on to younger students. Band has such a lasting legacy, and it's so important for social emotional development for kids. And in our mental health crisis, it's and there's so many studies even with ADHD and development in academic core curriculum subjects, how music, especially ensemble music, contributes to that.
Angie, really good to hear from you. Thanks very much. As a parent in Surrey, really good to hear your perspective. We have another call in Ladysmith now, and Shelley's on the line. Hi, Shelley.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
I'm a former arts educator in the District of Maple Ridge, and kudos to our board for listening to that rally. I guess my concern is not just for music, but for the larger picture of arts education as a whole, of which, of course, music is an integral part. I'd like to know when, specifically, the fine arts became some kind of a peripheral frill as opposed to core curriculum, which gets all of the attention and all of the, becomes the focus of parents and funding, when the arts are a fundamental pillar of civilization. And the arts are one of the largest employers in this province in the form of the film and television industries. And yet we have this 19th century approach from parents and boards and governments who are treating the fine arts as though they are some kind of a fun elective that's not really very serious, which is ludicrous when you consider the amount of employment that not only music, but visual arts, theater arts, film arts, all of the technical production work that goes on. It is a huge employer, a very real career path. And if people were saying, oh, well, we're going to cut funding to mathematics, or we're going to cut funding to language arts, parents would be up in arms.
Okay.
But, it's just the arts.
Yeah, Shelley, thank you very much. Charlene, our last caller now in Vancouver. Hi, Charlene, and you feel passionate about music programs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a music lover myself. I've researched music a lot, just informally, and have read so much on the development of the brain, how primary music is, how it connects not only cognitively, but emotionally, intellectually. It's the last thing that should be cut from any education program that's trying to grow brains or encourage social development. And I believe it's just a primary, human connector that is so important in this day and age, where all these kids are feeling alienated on their social media and they're getting disconnected. Music connects like nothing else. And, you know, when I remember being a teenager, being very depressed sometimes. You know, it's hard to be a kid sometimes. And what rose us up was music. You know, in those days it was like the Beatles or whatever. But music is as powerful today as it ever was. I thought that was a good point the person made about it's also, lots of employment in music. But it's deeper than that. It's a fundamental human treasure.
Charlene, thank you so much for the call. And so Kristen Reardon McClellan, obviously people there feeling very strongly about the value of music education. What would be the biggest benefit of music education in your view?
Well, and all this is articulated so beautifully. So not to repeat what the caller said, but, you know, we have local data sets. There's a researcher at UBC, Peter Gazousis, who has conducted research using local data sets that show that music actually changes the brain. And so the cognitive benefits from learning music are huge, and they're locally documented. So that one I think is big for me. The other big point is that we are not attempting to create a bunch of professional musicians out of students. The whole point of music education is to teach them how to be human, teach them how to function in society, teach them how to cultivate and prolong a society that values the arts. What would we be without the arts? And if that's not happening in our public schools, then where is it happening? I would also draw some attention to the fact that every year, if we want to look at some data in Surrey, there are 83,000 kids in the Surrey School District. Approximately 3,000 of them are directly affected by these grade 7 band cuts. And that's each year. So 3,000 this year and 3,000 next year and the following year and the following year. This only costs $900,000 to deliver the program. And so it's just so short-sighted. So there's no doubt about the value.
Okay. We will continue to have this conversation, obviously, into the next school year as well. Kirsten, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Kristen Reardon McClellan is a board member for the Coalition for Music Education in Canada.